Do you have a loved one that you think has hearing loss? It's maybe a wife or a husband, a parent, and you notice that they're always turning the TV up a lot louder than you do, or they are always or frequently asking you to repeat yourself, and you're sure there's something wrong, and yet they think everything is just fine. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 tips and tricks that you can use to help encourage your loved one to take their hearing seriously. Hi, I'm Hainan with Hainan's Ear Tips, where I bring you tips and tricks about better hearing with or without hearing aids. So you have a loved one that you think has a hearing problem, and every time you bring it up, they say, "No, I hear just fine. Everybody else is mumbling." The reality is, for many people, it's very hard to accept that they have a hearing problem because to them, it sounds like everybody else has the problem. It doesn't sound like they're deaf. It just sounds like nobody's speaking clearly. And if everybody would just speak clearly like everybody used to in their head, it would all be better. And so because to the person with the hearing loss, it feels like it's not their problem, and because to admit that it's a problem comes with other implications, the fear of hearing aids, the fear of the cost of hearing aids, the fear of using hearing aids, the stigma, the feeling that they're getting older, and all that causes them to resist subconsciously this reality. So this can really become kind of an impossible situation. And every time you might bring it up, it can actually turn into a little conflict, a little argument, which actually makes the problem worse. Because now the person not only is resisting the whole idea of getting their hearing problem addressed, but now they're defending their position. So what can you do about it? I'd like to suggest that idea number 1 is lead by example. Suggest that you get a hearing check, a hearing test. That's it. Don't bring up hearing aids. Don't talk about how they need to fix their ears. Talk about a hearing check, and talk about the idea that, most of us get our teeth checked routinely, preventatively. We get our eyes checked routinely and preventatively. Why not our ears? And it is actually a healthy idea to have your ears checked periodically at any age to keep track of anything that might creep up without you knowing. And so you can lead by example, say, hey, we're concerned, we care about our health, let's go together, let's get our hearing checked so we have a baseline for the future. That way, if anything ever changes with our hearing, we can measure against where it was before and know what's happened. Now, on this whole baseline test idea, sometimes people will just shoot down that idea and say, I don't need a hearing test, my hearing is just fine. And that's where you really have to kind of take a step back, and what you could try is getting really curious. Maybe not the first time you brought it up, but maybe later at another point in time. Something to the effect of, I'm kind of curious about getting our hearing tested just to see where it's at, kind of like we get everything else checked. I know I brought it up another time, and it sounded like something that didn't really interest you. I'm just curious, what do you feel is the danger or the harm in why don't you want to get your hearing checked? They might tell you a reason that you can address. It might be like, oh, I don't want to get sold hearing aids, or I'm worried that I'm going to have to spend lots of money on hearing aids, or that I'm going to have to wear something ugly. Sometimes it might be a simple thing that you can address, telling them that hearing aids are comfortable nowadays for most people, that there's lots of different options. But if you're not curious and you don't ask those questions, you may not know what their real reason is. And tip number 2, sometimes truly going to a hearing care provider is too big of a step for some people. And that's where you can simply encourage them, why don't you just try a quick online hearing check just to prove me wrong? You can go to a place like phonak.com that's the name of a major hearing aid brand, and there's other places, and do an online hearing screening. It walks you through the steps. You have to put some headphones on and you respond to some beeps, and it just gives you an idea if there's any hearing loss there or not. Sometimes people don't have hearing loss even though it may look like it. And so you can invite your loved one to just get a hearing check just to prove you wrong. Sound like you're on their side. Or at our clinic, we have a little pen, and it's a little hearing tester. You could borrow it, take it home. You just hold it next to the ear and say, hey, did you hear that tone? And push it again. Hey, did you hear that one? They heard it or they didn't. If they heard both of them, fantastic. Leave it at that for now. If they didn't, then you can suggest that we might want to learn a little bit more about what's going on here. The third tip for helping somebody, a loved one that you think might have hearing loss, is to not be their hearing aid. So when you're watching TV together and your loved one turns to you and said, what did they say? You might just be quiet and say, nothing. And when you're out with friends and your loved one is sitting there with that confounded look because they're not really a part of the conversation, and they turn to you repeatedly and say, what was that? What did they say? And you look at them and you give them that blank but loving smile of, that may help them begin to own their problem and see they actually have a problem hearing. So try not to be the hearing aid. So it's not easy helping a loved one accept and do something about their hearing problem, especially because of all the interpersonal dynamics of relationships. But keep these ideas in mind of leading by example to get baseline hearing checks, possibly trying an online hearing test, and simply not being their hearing aid can be helpful.